Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel for some more Diablo Immortal content. So in today's video, we will be going over a review of what is currently inside of the alpha in the second phase. I'm also going to be giving them some feedback so they can kind of improve on some of the systems that already currently exist in the game. So first off, I want to go ahead and mention that this video will not go in depth on every single system. I'm just going to try to make this a more brief video. However, there's going to be tons of things if you guys are interested in seeing the entire microtransaction like shop, or if you guys are interested in seeing like some of the other forms of endgame content, those will be all pinned down below. There's also going to be dungeons and other boss battles, but this video is just kind of going over everything and my overall thoughts on stuff that currently exists in the second phase of the alpha, as I wanted to basically cover the new stuff. You guys are seeing some of the newer form of a gameplay content that is called contracts, and in the very beginning what we'll need to do is collect certain pieces of like demon frog eyes, and then we're going to go do the actual contract, which actually requires us to sneak around. This is something that's a little bit different. I think it is really cool to mix up some of the gameplay in Diablo Immortal, just to give us just more variety, as I think that that's something that I definitely would like to see, as basically the forms of endgame content that still exist in Diablo Immortal. It's just that I like having more things to do than just bounties and rifts. So first off, at the start of the video, I want to go ahead and go over a bunch of things rapid fire really quick, just so some of you guys can get that maybe question answered immediately. But first off, there is no official date on the release date. The file size for the game on at least my phone, which is a Samsung Galaxy S10, it's 6.63 gigs. The game looks and feels like Diablo 3, and it plays pretty much just as smooth as Diablo 3. Obviously, depending on your internet connection, that can matter, as well as when you go into town. Like a lot of people ask, is it laggy? I would say no in terms of like the gameplay content. Like the game itself doesn't feel like it's chugging along. It's more so going to be dependent on your connection. But a lot of times when I did go back to specifically West March, which is like the main town hub, there were some frame drops. That could be due to my phone, or the area has just got a lot of stuff, but it's basically the town. So in terms of the combat, it feels very, very smooth. And also, when does this game actually take place? It takes place in between Diablo 2 and 3, but technically also in the game, because you kind of go back into the past, it does take place in between Diablo 1 and 2. The game will be free, and there is going to be no characters locked behind a paywall, as in when people say, you know, can you play the Necromancer, or do you have to pay for that character or class? No, everything will be unlocked. There's nothing that's locked behind a paywall in terms of like our character. There is an auction house that does exist in the game. You cannot buy legendary armors or weapons. You're basically just buying gems or legendary gems, and this will affect your character. If you do play Diablo 3, you basically know exactly what gems are. They improve whatever stat that the gem would actually improve. Now, as far as it being like pay to win, there's a lot of stuff that we don't have access to, but there will be a video in the pinned comments that will show you guys the difference between a rift that uses paid, what are called legendary crests, which will guarantee you a legendary gem drop at the very end of completing it. But you can also get these by just completing certain tasks in the game. You'll get crests that you can just kind of acquire as you progress in the game. But the difference between using a crest and not using a crest in a rift, which I'll show off later, is actually pretty huge. Definitely check out the video if you guys are interested more in like the microtransaction department in regards to that. But right now we get a lot of eternal orbs. This could be just due to it being an alpha, but if this rolls over and we get a bunch of those eternal orbs daily, then I would say the game is very safe for players that aren't interested in spending any money. The game does still use art assets, even audio files from previous Diablo games. You just saw the Enchantress over here in the gameplay. Now you guys can see I had to sneak around over here. I basically get into any of the little circles that the enemies are patrolling an area in, then I will fail and I have to reset. So this is kind of just newer gameplay here that I wanted to show off at the start. But yeah, like I said, you'll definitely see some of the other characters. You'll see some of the characters that you hear about in the previous Diablo games that you never get to see, which is really cool. I won't show you guys any spoilers here. It's just basically just a bunch of the end game content here. But this is just a new form of gameplay here, and I think it's interesting. I wouldn't mind doing it a few different times, but you know, at the heart and soul of an action RPG, you got to be killing stuff for the loot, and I think that they do a very good job in giving us enough like gameplay content. But another question that you guys might have is, can you beat the game without using like the auction house or spending any real money? And the answer is absolutely. I had no problems with progressing the campaign without like interacting with any like, you know, auction house or anything like that. Like if you guys just want to play this for, let's say, the lore or just want to check out the game, you won't hit what's called like a wall. A lot of mobile or even free games, you get to a point where you what's called hit the wall and you have to spend money to progress in the game to complete the campaign. You do not need to do this at all in this. Now, if you want to min-max to be a little bit faster and to upgrade your gems, yeah, you're definitely going to get an advantage if you happen to spend what's called platinum, which is a form of premium currency that you technically can also earn in-game by just, you know, doing your dailies. You'll get different forms of currencies, you'll get honor, and some of the stuff you can only get by just playing the game as well. But there is another form of currency that you can probably buy. Again, we only have access to so much in the shop right now. But in addition to that, the game does have a battle pass. There's a free one and a paid one. The stuff in the paid one, there's a lot of stuff that's just locked. You just can't even see it at the moment. You still have rifts as a form of endgame content, and there is still bounties. Another question that you guys might have is the game still dark? And the answer is yes, it's very dark. In fact, I would say it's much darker than Diablo 3, especially from the story standpoint and what they show off in this game. Right now, in the App Store at least, it shows a teen rating. I think this game will definitely get an M rating, but I know that sometimes games can pass on mobile just because it's a little bit smaller. But by all means, the game is not going to be like the Rainbow Goblin area in Diablo 3. Like, the game is still dark, and there is a lot of dark lore to this. If you do happen to want to like read in the game, there is dark stuff, and what they show off, I was actually really surprised. If this game gets a teen rating, I'm going to be very surprised, but it's cool. I won't spoil what happens in the game, but they do kill off things that normally they would not show off in a game, especially even a mobile game or a game with a teen rating. But another thing that a lot of people want to know, what's the PvP like? I'm going to go ahead and actually run to the PvP. Now, I do want to do a dedicated video for the more structured PvP, but a lot of times in this Bilefen area, this is like another form of kind of endgame content. Like, there's a better PvP, and I'll reserve that for another video. But a lot of times what happens is you'll go to this area, and what happens is every few hours, you'll be able to open up a chest. There'll be a boss that spawns in. Anyone that's not partied up with you, you have to kill them. Otherwise, they have a chance to open up the chest and take all your loot. We just eliminated the guy super fast. One thing with the PvP right now, though, is a lot of times it just comes down to, are you in a party? Does your party have more players than the other party? If so, you're more than likely going to be winning, but if you do open up the chest, you will be getting a legendary. I want to say it's guaranteed. I don't think I've ever opened up this chest and not gotten a legendary. But speaking of getting legendaries, it's very, very difficult in this game to get legendaries. It takes a long, long, long time. But speaking of other new forms of content, which I showed off in the very beginning, where it was like we had to sneak around, this is another form of new gameplay content, and I actually like this. There are puzzles in the game. Now, we only had access to so much of the game, and there were only a few handful of puzzles, but this one's pretty cool. If you guys have ever heard of the game like Lasers, it's kind of like that, where there's a laser, and you have to have the laser touch a certain area, and you have to move these mirrors to have the lasers bounce off. There's more than just this puzzle, but I like this. This is really cool, and it really mixes up some of the gameplay variety for, again, like I showed off before, where you had to sneak around. It's just kind of cool, and I'm really blown away with, you know, how much they're adding into this game. In fact, there's a section in the game where you will actually become a shadow, and you can actually battle these immortals. There's a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to condense it all into this like one video over here, but there's so much content that is completely new to this game. But overall, those are the things that I wanted to get over just really quick right off the bat. And I want to give you guys kind of my impressions of the game now that we have a bunch of the questions just answered rapid fire really fast right there. And if you guys still have any questions, definitely let me know in the comment section below. But now I want to dig into giving the game some numerical numbers and giving them some better feedback on what they should improve on the game to be really, really good. Because as a Diablo fan, I want this game to be as successful as possible, because that could potentially help out the Diablo games later down the line, especially looking forward to Diablo 2 Resurrected as well as Diablo 4. But they will be giving this game newer content too, so that'll be kind of cool to see what forms of content this game does get. So first off, I want to go ahead and establish this really quick, as you know, this is a new mobile game. There's going to be a lot of players that have maybe never played Diablo, or this is their first Diablo game or first action RPG. Now, over on the channel, if you guys are subscribers over here, you guys have probably seen my Diablo videos before. I've been making Diablo videos for a really long time. Heck, I still upload Diablo 1 content, I still upload Diablo 2 content. In terms of action RPGs, I made tons of guides for games like Path of Exile. So like, I've played a lot of different action RPGs, and for me, I would say that this game is very beginner friendly. So if you haven't played an action RPG, this is your first one, maybe you want to play with a friend, this is a really easy game to get started. Later down the line, the game will get more complex, but in the very beginning, it's more of a hack and slash game equipped with whatever has the up arrows because the numbers are higher. Later down the line in the game, you will definitely get things like CDR, or I should say cooldown reduction, you can get attack speed, you can get other crowd control immunities, like you get more of these things later down the line in the game. It doesn't introduce a lot of these stats to worry about in the very beginning, which I personally would like to see all these complexities in the very beginning of the game, but I totally get it because it's a mobile game, and on top of that, because there's going to be a lot of newer players, you don't want to scare your players away too early on with the complexity, and I can respect them for that, but in terms of what I would like to see, I want as much complexity as possible. In terms of like the skills and stuff, it's relatively straightforward. You have a bunch of skills. To modify the skills, what you do is you get legendary items that will have like a modifier. The legendary items are basically runes on your skills. So with my shield throw right here, when I use it, you'll see that I have multiple charges. Normally what happens is it shoots, then it comes right back. Now I have a legendary that changes it so it spins in place and it does damage over time. So that would be like one modifier that a legendary does do. You're not going to get too many insane modifiers on your like blues and rare items. In fact, this is something in terms of a point of critique that I would like to give it. I think yellow should be a viable form of endgame content in terms of like a equipable like, you know, weapon. Pretty much the game is all about legendaries, which helps out as a content creator because like I can tell people if you want to make this build you get these items versus like in Path of Exile getting certain like rare items are super hard and some people will never get them, so it kind of helps me out as a content creator, so that is like it's a pro and a con depending on what you like. In terms of complexity, I would say it's more so on the simple side at least. But in terms of the gameplay, what does it feel like? It plays very similar to Diablo 3. So if you were like, you know, on the fence of trying the game, heck, the game is free. I could definitely recommend this game. I don't really play that many action RPGs on mobile. I've tried out Anima, I tried out Raziel, Dungeon Hunter. This just blows them all out of the water. Visually and how smooth the game plays and just overall, like the AAA quality definitely shows in this game. Like it's super smooth, and I really like the story. Check out the video that I'll pin down below. It goes over like the final act that we have access to, and the story's really good for that. And like the boss that you battle, it's really cool. So for story, like in terms of numerical value, and these number values, you know, obviously the game is, you know, in alpha, things are subject to change, but the reason why I want to give some numbers out of 10 here is for some of the people that are working on the game to kind of get an idea and get some feedback for what they should work on. Story-wise, I think the game is like 9 out of 10. Like, it's really solid. There are areas where it takes a little bit too long to progress to the next area. I feel like in terms of like gameplay in the campaign, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. The reason why, and it's not because the gameplay itself isn't good, but like gameplay in the campaign, the one thing that I didn't like is reach this level to progress to the next part of the story. I did not like to do repeated dungeons or doing several dungeons over and over again to reach a level to continue my campaign. I feel like they should scale the XP when you complete the, you know, dungeon to be much higher the first time you do it, so you don't have to do the same dungeons over and over again to actually reach a certain level, then you can progress the campaign. I think it should be one smooth process versus it just feels awkward. Now, this could be a design decision because I understand they want us to do like, you know, other forms of content. This could be a great time to go ahead and do, let's say, the bounties or the other forms of, you know, content that exists in the game that you can just keep on doing. So I can understand from a design standpoint, but I think there will be people that will be kind of frustrated with that. So I think it'd be overall a better decision to make the campaign one smooth process, to not have to like leave, if that makes any sense, and do like other things. Now, the endgame gameplay, I would actually give it like an 8 out of 10. There's so many ways to do content here. There's bounties, you can do rifts, you can also just explore the world and just party up with people, and I like that. You don't even really have to like invite them to the party, you can just do things out in the world, and I really liked that. The reason why I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, I feel like there's a lot of things, especially the dailies, that get a little bit repetitive, considering that the bounties you have to do 12 of, and a lot of times you'll like kill 5 of these, then you'll grab something, and then you'll place it over here. Like the multi-step bounties or the bounties to do an entire dungeon take a long time, and because you have to do 12 of them, it can feel a little bit tedious. So because the bounties are tied to the daily that gets you your charm, which you're going to want to farm over and over again because you want to upgrade your charm, it just takes a really, really long time for that. Now, in terms of PvP, balance is a huge issue. I'll probably make a separate video on the actual PvP, the more structured one, but it's kind of just wild in terms of balance. I would say for numerical values, I gotta give this a 5 out of 10. This is the area that I think needs a significant amount of work. Obviously, we're just at the start of it. This is the first time we've had access to the PvP, so obviously balance is a huge issue. But it's not just balance in terms of this skill is OP, this class is OP. The main thing is that you can enchant your items with plus stats on gear. If you've played almost any action RPG or even RPG, you can keep on enchanting your gear to make it stronger and stronger and stronger. When one person has a bunch of stuff that's plus 10 versus someone that has plus 0, it's a little bit unfair. And on top of that, you also have to balance Paragon, as that's a form of, power. And pretty much everything in the game grants you power as you progress in the game. And I've seen a lot of players, when I was doing PvP, there were people that would have 0 kills and 10, 20 deaths. Do I think that they would come back to PvP? Probably not. On top of that, PvP was really limited. We only had basically an hour to do it a day, 2 different times, and you had to be there on those windows. I've queued up sometimes for several different phases, and it was just not enough players again and again. So I think that the PvP definitely needs to have a more sense of balance, but also it's not just, again, the numerical values on certain skills being too strong. It really comes down to those players that go to PvP once, get absolutely destroyed, one-shotted, and they don't want to do it again. But if you play Diablo 2 or even Diablo 3 PvP, that's just kind of how it was. And I don't think it needs to be that way. I think we can have a good balance. And one thing that they could do is maybe cap the plus enchants, or specifically make it so everyone's enchant is at plus, a certain numbers, just so it's balanced. So that way, people aren't getting one-shotted over and over again, and it doesn't just feel bad for the people that, have absolutely no chance because of the stats. So PvP is the main focus here, and what I think needs to be improved upon. Now, in terms of gameplay and how smooth it is, I would give it an 11 out of 10. For a mobile game, this is absolutely insane. I'm not a mobile game player, but this is by far the smoothest mobile game I've ever played, and honestly, if the resolution was just upped a little bit, I would have honestly believed this is a Diablo 3 expansion pack for PC. The gameplay is super smooth, and some of the skills and the interactions are cool too, and I really like that. Now, in terms of creativity with builds, this is where it gets a little subjective too, but I like complexity. There is what's called the Heliquary, which is something that's kind of like Kanai's Cube, but it's basically numerical stat value, so it's plus power, so stat. If you want to think of the Heliquary as kind of like a Kanai's Cube, but it just gives you numbers values. In fact, the whole game, even on the Paragon trees, it's pretty much just number values, as in plus damage or plus defense, plus life. These things, it's not as complex as I would like it to be, but again, this could be a design decision that they don't want to overcomplicate things to make things so hard that players get discouraged to even play it. But for me, I want the game to be complex, but this is where, again, it gets subjective, and that's personally my feedback. I think with the end game, the Paragon tree, it would be really cool if it was basically one tree and it would just branch out, and you would actually have to, you'd see a lot more, and them to be a lot more meaningful than just, plus extra attack damage, plus attack speed, plus defense stats. I think we can get a little bit more complex with this, is what I'm saying. Things, for example, maybe you can have a node where instead of your cooldowns, you start sacrificing HP so you can start prioritizing getting life regen on, certain things. Kind of like how in Diablo 2 we had a lot of crazy builds. I didn't really see any crazy builds with this game. What I'm talking about with crazy builds is things like in Diablo 2 where we had the Whirlwind Assassin or we had the Bear Sorceress. These are really weird things that I think are kind of cool, or even class-specific skills that would be granted via items on another class. For example, if you guys remember the Runeword Enigma, where you're able to equip it and then you could just straight teleport with any class, which I think is really cool, and I would like to see that kind of return. But speaking of rune words, there is no rune words that would exist that are like Diablo 2 style, where you get the runes and you put them into sockets. Pretty much what they're used for is crafting gems. and you can also purchase the runes so you can craft the gem. At the end of the day, for me, I would like to see rune words because then they're kind of like a universal form of another currency, but technically legendary gems can modify your character as well. So I think that the complexity comes down to getting your legendary gems and then ranking them up and trying to kind of build your character a little bit with the gem system, as like there's ways where like you can taunt enemies and then you can maybe get modifiers when you taunt, you know, you do something else, right? But I think there could be a little bit more complexity with this game. For me personally, I think that that'd be nice for the end game and for the people that want to grind for hundreds and thousands of hours, because that's what I like to do with action RPGs. I like to spend lots and lots of time. But I think if you're a casual player, you will definitely still have a lot of fun with this game, and you can, you know, just complete the campaign and you'll have a good time for sure. As like I said before, I really enjoyed it, especially for like the lore and stuff. But other things that would really help out this game, I think, is one thing would be an armory swap. So if you guys have played Diablo 3, when you want to change your build, you can actually save your build and just swap it with just basically go to the armory, swap to the set, and it just swaps your entire gear to another thing that you saved. This could be really nice, especially for PvP, for the people that do want to participate in it. That would be awesome, and I think that that would be a huge thing that would be just more so for quality of life. But speaking of quality of life, when you max out a character, and on average it'll take you about 20-ish hours to max out your first character, your Paragon progression does carry over, but you don't have access to it at level 1. You actually have to max your character out, then you have access to the Paragon. And it kind of makes sense because when you do things in like the world with like random people, you don't want one guy that has a bunch of Paragon just one-shotting and destroying the entire game, because it will just change up the experience, which I can kind of understand. But at the same time, because it takes so long to level up your character, it kind of discourages people to make multiple characters or classes to max them out. Like, I've maxed out the Demon Hunter, the Sorceress or Wizard, and the Crusader, and it takes a really long time to do that. So I think a better incentive for players that want to do multi-classes could definitely be something in the game to look forward to. But overall, wrapping up my thoughts with this game, there's really nothing in terms of a mobile game that is on the same level as this game. Like, there's so many forms of endgame content, and as a Diablo fan, I'm really looking forward to giving you guys some more content with this game, and I'll still continue to create content for Diablo 3, and when Diablo 2 Resurrected comes out this year, which we've already actually covered, I will be doing all of the games, and I'm curious to know what you guys plan to play at the start of Diablo Immortal. For me, I will definitely be rolling Demon Hunter, and I definitely want to do PvP, but I hope they can really get the balance, because that's the one thing I think that they need to pay attention to versus any of the other forms of endgame content. As for me personally, that is the form of endgame content that will keep players continuously playing, but it really needs to be balanced somehow so the players that spend thousands and thousands of hours into the game don't have such a huge advantage. The players that are like just starting out will just get obliterated, go 0-20, and probably just stick away from PvP because of one bad experience. And I get that. It will definitely happen. Like I said before, when PvP, when we were first able to play it, we got some games, but then later down the line, we just weren't getting games. And I can kind of tell why. When people get slammed that hard and they just lose, it can definitely be something to consider. But anyways, if you guys do want to see more Diablo content on my channel, as well as other gaming stuff, as we'll cover other stuff, and you're new here, subscribe, turn on that bell, and you'll definitely see more very soon. But if there's anything else that you guys felt like I missed out on that you want me to cover for Diablo Immortal, or have questions about the game, definitely check the pinned comment as I show off all the boss fights. I show off the last final act, and the story on that one's really, really good too. Definitely check that out, as it'll be pinned down below. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm looking forward to playing Diablo Immortal, as well as other Diablo content on the channel, and share it with you guys in the future. But take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next vid. Peace.